Local history, local culture, local events, your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Kelly Roman is our guest. Kelly is a ranger up at Fort Stanwix National Monument, and Fort Stanwix is what we're going to be talking about today. Good to see you again.
Pleasure to see you too, Joe.
Is the fort on its winter schedule?
Yes, so there's two parts to the winter schedule. The first one is when we close the fort for the year. So the fort is closed. If the stars align, the weather is good, no safety concerns, then at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., people would be invited on a tour into the fort so you can still explore it. And then starting on December 22nd, the visitor center will be closed 2 days a week. And the fort will be closed on a similar schedule to what it has been. But those days are Sunday and Monday until April 1st.
But if people want to come through at those 10 and 2,
Yes.
for the, where on your regular schedule, you just wander in and out.
Yeah.
You don't need a special time to come in.
No.
Okay, so 10 and 2 are the hours to go if you want. And would a ranger take you through?
Yes, a ranger would be bringing you through, telling you a little bit about soldiers' life in the winter, what life was like there in general. But we do tend to focus on the winter because for many of these soldiers, let's face it, the 10th Mountain Division didn't exist.
Yeah.
And they weren't out there skiing through the woods to try to still engage in combat. So once about this time of the year set in, if not mid-October, they were locked wherever they were. So that's a long time to be stuck until the snow melts.
Yeah. And when a visitor comes through on one of those tours at 10 or 2, where do they go? Do they go to the visitor center?
Go to the visitor center first, and a ranger will make an announcement around 10 or 2, or just say, hey, I'd like to go on the tour at 10, and we don't even need to make the announcement if you're right there. So.
Mm-hmm. And what was the, and there's no charge for this?
No, all free of charge.
Yeah. What was it like for the troops that were at Fort Stanwix back in 77,
78, or even 58 when the fort was first garrisoned. From everything I garnered, pretty boring depending on the time of the year. So winter, as I said, they're kind of locked in where they are. So there's stories of people getting drunk and causing fights. There's stories of people's fighting with their commanders, and there's stories of how cold it was. Someone actually recorded on Christmas Eve in 1779. The only thing they wrote down was a small snow fell, nothing else remarkable. So it wasn't the most entertaining place in the world, but you have to imagine many of these people, the average age of these soldiers is somewhere between 20 and 25. So I imagine it was a bit like a college frat party minus the college education. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of weird stuff that could only happen when people get bored.
When you learn about these things, how, Kelly?
Research. One of my primary things that I like to go to are the orderly books. So these are the documents, the diaries related to the officers in charge. Every day there were decisions that had to be made, there were orders that were given, there were people assigned in charge of certain things and specific things. So every day these things were detailed in these books, in these journals. And many of them have made their way down to us in the 21st century. Some have been lost to time, some have been lost in fires after people got little bits of them. But we're always hoping to find another one. We've actually found a couple of, well, not found, but had donated to us a couple of ledger books or similar to orderly books for merchants that were used for about a 10-year time period at the fort and the area surrounding. And that was given to us about a decade ago. So there's always interesting things coming out of the woodwork.
The orderly books will be like a ship's log.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The food that was consumed during the winter, what kind of food were they?
Dried, pickled meats, boiled meats, salted meats, pork, beef, dried peas on occasion, dried carrots, dried cabbage, anything that could be preserved, flour that you could mix up into a Johnny cake, which is basically a greasy pancake, or stir into your stew, or dry into hardtack, or bake into bread. So your options get kind of boring. Another thing that they did give out regularly, though, especially in the winter, and you can see it during holiday times, is vinegar, rice vinegar.
What were they using that for?
It has vitamin C in it, so you're avoiding scurvy by drinking it.
Was there alcohol available?
Yes, actually, alcohol was part of a regular soldier's ration, about a gill or a little shot cup worth of rum every day. And it's a little bit less than, I guess, say the Navy. I've heard some ruckus stories about the Navy at the time, but the Army, it was regular fare. And the simple reason is because it's safer to drink alcohol than it is to drink the water. So many times this was mixed into your water. There was a concoction called small beer, which was a watered down alcoholic beverage that was fed to children. So more people in the 18th century consumed alcohol simply because it was safer. They didn't realize why, but they knew they got less sick when they drank the alcoholic beverages than they did water.
Yeah. Kelly, did supplies get through in the winter, or once the snow came, were they cut off at Fort Stanwix?
From the understanding I have, most of the time they were cut off. If there were people coming through, it was few and far between. It was small groups that were adapted to traveling. So during the French and Indian wartime period, there was a group of Rangers, Rogers Rangers in particular, that were attached to the fort, but they did not garrison the fort. And they would be known to practice snowshoeing on the outskirts of the Oneida Carry property and area. One time they actually ended up getting into a skirmish just a day or two after they went out to practice on their snowshoes. But this was basically the strike force of the day. So they were used to operating in this type of weather, and they kept their forces small, so it was easier to.
Okay, Kelly Roman's our guest. We're talking about Fort Stanwix. We're going to talk some more with Kelly right after this short break, and we'll be right back.